Hello and welcome. You're watching The Big Picture with me, Ishan Russell. Over the weekend, a tectonic shift happened in the world. As after 13 days of intense negotiations in Paris, 196 countries agreed to a global climate deal. The deal was struck in a rare show of near universal accord as poor and wealthy nations from across political and the geographic spectrum expressed support for measures that require all to take steps to battle climate change. The agreement binds together previous pledges by individual nations to cut or limit emissions from fossil fuel burning within a framework of rules that provide for monitoring and verification as well as financial and technical assistance for developing countries. The overarching goal is to bring down pollution levels so that the rise in global temperatures is limited to no more than 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial averages. The ambition is to restrict the temperature increase even further to 1.5 degrees Celsius if possible. Prime Minister Modi called it a win for climate justice and the United States called it a victory for the planet and future generations. But the question is, how does this work? And there are also concerns that have been raised about how binding are the terms of this deal. So to help us understand this global climate deal, its implications and the road forward, today I'm joined by Mr. Chandra. He's the Deputy Director General of the Centre for Science and Environment, Soma Banerjee, Principal Energy and Security at CII, Energy and Infrastructure, and Nitin Desai, former Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations. Mr. Desai, I'll start with you as somebody who's really been involved in defining India's position at the climate change conference in terms of what are the real commitments that have been made in terms of the highlights of this particular deal. Do you think it's a landmark achievement for the world?
I think it is. I think it's a landmark achievement because of the signals that it conveys for future investments. I would say that I thought what came out of Paris was a little more than I was expecting. The plus points for me are the recognition that the goal, that we are nowhere near on track for the goal. That is explicit statements made by countries saying, yes, we are not there as yet. Accepting the goal, even saying we can go up to 1.5 degrees, the commitment on the 5-year review, and there is word there saying that your next NDC must be more ambitious than the present one. So in short, you're generating a sort of public pressure for countries to keep on improving on what they have already offered and put on the table. Is it a fair deal? That I don't know, because a lot will depend on how these market pressures work out over, and also how civil society pressures work out. Because only compliance mechanism is that.
Okay.
Is really, because there is nothing else which will enforce these commitments, these pledges.
Yes, and that's the question I want to put across to Chandra as well, that as far as ensuring that these commitments are adhered to, does this particular deal have enough in it? Does it have enough teeth, if I may say so?
First of all, Bhushan.
Sorry, Bhushan, my mistake.
Okay. Okay. So, let me say that I find I'm less optimistic than Nitin about this deal, simply because there are many elements in this deal which makes this deal quite unambitious. Point number one, your mitigation targets are not legally binding. Developed countries have promised money, but they have not committed to it. Your technology deal that is there in the Paris Agreement is a lot of words, but I don't think that those words will be easy to operationalize. And lastly, the historical responsibility of developed countries have been erased. So now countries' climate action will be based on capabilities and national circumstances, which means that the differentiation which we all believe is there in the text is actually not there. So I believe this is a deal which is a lowest common denominator. Compromises were made to bring all countries on board, but we are not leave 1.5 degree, leave 2 degrees. I think it will be difficult for world to remain even towards 2.5 degrees. 1.5 degrees out. For meeting 1.5 degree, we should be talking about decarbonization by 2035 across the world.
Right.
That's not happening. So I think Paris Agreement has all the right words, but the elements that is required to meet those targets are not there.
Right. Shoma, would you agree with that? That it's a move forward, but it's only an incremental move forward. Too much is being made about it in terms of actually a real deal which we can see impacting in the immediate. That's not going to happen.
You know, I wouldn't be as skeptical or cynical right away. I think I would be more measured. Yes, I agree that the statement has all the right words. I also see why this cynicism or skepticism, because maybe those words which could give you that assurance or belief that these words will play out are not all there. But I think it's finally about, like Mr. Desai said, I agree with him that it's finally something which countries have to accept on their own. See, you had the Kyoto Protocol, but you also had countries walking out from that protocol because, you know, the binding things were not accepted. So why go for something which countries will finally say it's not acceptable, we can't do it, and walk out from it? Instead, this approach where countries actually voluntarily set their own targets based on what they can do, and there again, it is about the role of civil society, business, etc. within the country, who should play a role with the polity and the society to see that this can be done. See, like Mr. Desai said, I agree completely. This is not something which you will take to the International Court of Justice or The Hague. This is something which people and citizens and every person in the world has to believe and do. So that is what we are hoping will push, whether it is the people in the US or it is in India or anywhere else. It is the civil society, it is the people, it is the society which has to push the polity and the action that is required.
I mean, but Mr. Desai, the point is that we landed up over here because of the push from civil society, because from various activists, because of the fact that the island nations fear drowning to that extent. So, in a sense, shouldn't more have happened? Shouldn't perhaps legally binding terms have been better? But as Shoma was pointing out, that was really not possible.
Let's take this legally binding. Kyoto Protocol is legally binding.
What?
Do you think it made any difference to the actual implementation?
That's the point.
Did it make a difference in Canada? Did it make a difference in Japan? Did it make a difference in Australia, who all signed on and said it is legally binding? No, that frankly,
doesn't work,
that
yeah.
if you do not have compliance mechanisms, penalties, more clearly, then the calling something legally binding is a farce.
Yeah,
it's an illusion.
yeah, exactly.
What could have been done, what was not done, was to say that countries must make their commitments legally binding within their country.
With themselves.
Now, that's a different thing. Now, that could have been said, and that would have powerful effects. And what that has not been said, as far as I can see from the 30-page text. And that is the one thing that could have been done. This is why Mr. Chandra Bhushan, his colleagues in civil society have a lot of work ahead of them.
All right.
Because that's where, look at India, look at India.
For instance,
where have we gotten our greatest advances in climate? It has been from what has been a partnership between civil society and the judiciary. It has not come from our legislators, it has not come from our executive. There's been a combination of civil society and judicial activism which has given us whatever little we have by way of environmental protection.
For instance, this whole condition that you can't slide back from your voluntary dispute. If we really have the civil society putting its pressure, the judiciary, as Mr. Desai, we have to ensure we don't slide back. Those are the things which will work as a bind.
Let's also try to understand what India has pledged already. Chandra Bhushan, if you could fill in on that in terms of the pledges that all nations are talking about. Let's talk about India and the developing world and vis-a-vis the developed world.
First of all, I will not, place so much faith in naming and shaming that the current Paris Agreement says that will push countries to do more. It has never worked in the past as well. If legally binding has not worked, naming and shaming has not worked either. Okay, so all this review and ratcheting mechanism, I don't think it's going to work so much. Coming back to INDCs, Paris Agreement more or less gives a 10 years of moratorium for world to do nothing. Developed world is not going to increase their ambition before 2020. There is going to be a farcical review in 2018, which means nothing. And then you will have first serious global stocktake in 2023. By the time countries put out their number or ambition, you are in 2025. So essentially, for the next 10 years, you are not going to see any significant increase in ambition or a significant deviation from the trajectory of emissions. 10 years of business as usual, so-called business as usual, means that 1.5 degree, as I said, is in the rear view mirror. Your carbon budget is over for 1.5 and you are fast approaching 2 degrees centigrade, and which is going to be devastating for the poor of the world. So for next 10 years, I am not sure how much civil society can do to bring us back on the track.
All right, and as far as the government's approach, we're also joined by Subhomoy Bhattacharjee, consulting editor at the Business Standard. Thanks very much for coming in, Subhomoy. I'll put that question to you. As far as the government's view on this particular matter is concerned, now, over the 13 days of the negotiations in Paris, we saw a little bit of U-turns happening as far as India's stand was concerned. And finally, it was kind of a mixed response. Prime Minister saying that climate justice has won at the end of the day. But then what is climate justice? Has India got what it bargained for in Paris?
Yeah, in the sense that we didn't have to raise our commitment. I mean, Chandra is right that India hasn't had to go the extra step, but the Paris Accord essentially leaves climate justice is the right word, leaves the situation exactly where it was before. So all countries are happy. Nobody has been asked to do more than what they are doing right now, and that I think is the disquieting part of the Paris Accord, that essentially it is standstill agreement.
All right, so the fact that everybody is happy is perhaps not a good thing, at least for the world. But Mr. Desai, I mean, the point is that how do we move on from here?
I think where you have to move on is basically the writing is on the table as far as the fossil fuel future is concerned. There is language in there which actually would put real dampers on international funding for some of these things. And I also believe that the innovation missions that have been drawn, the doubling of R&D in renewables that has been promised by about 20 countries, including India, that now what I would focus on is a combination of a couple of things. So on one side, I hope civil society holds governments accountable for what they've said, including the ratcheting up and including the credibility of the 2-degree goal. And I hope they continue to do that, and anything we can do to strengthen that is good. Second, I think basically we have to start looking at how the energy markets and its systems are going to evolve and start working for that. We have to do a lot of work to get renewables into a major profile of our energy system. Our grid management has to change radically if we want renewables on the scale that are required if we are to get to the 2-degree goal. For that matter, every other country also. So I'd say that there are many technological challenges, market development challenges, business challenges. And if I were there, I would basically tell the government, start focusing on that. Because if you are really serious about implementing even your INDC, you will have to do major changes in the way in which you do development now.
All right, and Soma, it's not just about the government, it's also about the private sector. It's also about how businesses who are also, I mean, there are large companies who are amongst the biggest polluters in the world as well. I mean, the responsibility over there, do you see enough happening with the Paris Climate Accord?
You know, I think the Paris Accord, for instance, is something where there's been a lot of weightage or at least talk around business opportunities. I haven't seen this earlier to this extent. And that is good because industry and business will play a very huge role in the way emissions or any of this happens. And you need the industry to be as responsible, if not taking the lead in many of these things. So on one hand, you have the whole story of mitigations, where you have the emitting, energy-intensive emitting companies, industries taking proactive steps. We have seen that in the cement industry in India. We're seeing it in steel and several other industries which have been identified as the PACT under the PACT program. Second, I think the second pillar, which is again very, very important, is energy efficiency. You will need to bring in energy efficiency also in our fossil fuel based industry. So we cannot do away with coal. Coal will remain your major fuel. But how can we make it more efficient? Are we going to go in for supercritical? We're not going to do any more of those small. Are we going to look at for coal washeries? Are we going to go for clean coal technology? These are things which the business community and industry will have to do. And the third pillar, which is the most important pillar, as Mr. Desai said, is renewables. There again, your whole play of setting up 100 gigs of solar or 175 gigawatts of renewable in the next 7 years, 2022, is a huge, huge target. It's a very ambitious target, and you really require the corporate sector or the industry to come in a big way to be able to do this. Which again is the responsibility which will fall upon the industry.
Okay.
They will have to do their bit and do it very proactively.
All right, and Subhomoy, this is the interesting point over here, that now the challenge is of implementing that pledge, and the fact that India's energy security at the time, it's almost a very critical time when we're looking at a lot of infrastructure development, we're looking at power sector growing in a big way, and to completely change the way we generate power or we source power, and our energy security is something that will be a huge challenge, won't it?
Absolutely. That is given that India has been an energy deficit country. We need energy to grow almost at the same pace as GDP. That is the elasticity of energy growth. So it has to be almost at the same pace as GDP. If the GDP has to grow at 8%, it has to grow at around 7.5%. But while that is one part of the story, and that will essentially have to move on, the second part is that the dialogue on climate issues is where now India has sort of committed that we are also going to be not the spoilers but a part of the solution. Now therefore India will have to be actually be needing, which for instance Soma pointing out that 175 gigawatts of renewable energy, those things will need to be seen to have been done, otherwise, and more, otherwise for India to say that we are helping the world also to go along towards a climate solution will be a difficult task, because both the domestic constituency as well as the foreign constituency will be saying, hang on, what are you doing? Are you part of the solution?
Exactly, and that's the question, Chandra, Bhushan, that many would ask, that Prime Minister Modi, while many are hailing him as one of the heroes of this particular accord, but as far as India is concerned, now the Prime Minister is also talking about a grand solar alliance of 110 countries, changing India's energy security needs as far as the renewable energy is concerned. But in terms of actual implementation, how far are we from realizing this particular dream?
I think we have made pretty good beginning as far as Solar Alliance is concerned. India's initiative was appreciated by everyone. We have put money on the table, initial money to host the Secretariat of International Solar Alliance. The objective is quite good. We need to bring countries on board, and we want developed countries to walk the talk. If they are talking about $100 billion, they should put money on the table and let renewable energy move ahead. As far as India's position on renewable energy at Paris was concerned, it was widely appreciated. I also believe that there was unnecessary controversy on coal, and India was, targeted there intentionally. I think it was a very well planned intention to corner India there. But I think we did pretty well there to salvage the situation. Now, coming back to what we need to do in India, I think we have to now, with the kind of targets we have put on the table, and the commitment that we have to show to the world, we will have to start investing in renewables, make sure that our targets is met, invest in energy efficiency. There are a lot of co-benefit agenda that India can do, and we should continue doing it. I think we have to show to the world that that we can do it, and push developed countries to do more. I think the next 5 years is going to be very, very important for India to salvage some of the things that we have lost at Paris.
One point, if I may come in to what Chandra Bhushan has said, and I agree completely on that, is that one is doing this. In the first few years, if we can really show that we are scaling up in, say, solar, or we're really building capacity, we will draw the technology to come here. For instance, the battery technology, the storage technology, which is the next big game changer in solar, and which we need if we really want to make this sustainable. Everybody is scared that it's going to be at a price which will be phenomenally high, and therefore not be accessible.
It does not guarantee a technology transfer.
It does not. But what industry believes is, while you don't have it in the agreement, and that would have been definitely a better thing, and I think India did strive for it. market should drive these things to come to a country like India. You know, the huge market you're going to get over here is something which any entrepreneur or any innovator will look for when he's developing a technology. I mean, ultimately, he has to sell his technology and he wants people to buy his technology.
Okay, but that's a theory, and does that theory hold
I would
ground?
say, let me say for Indian industry, you can't just look at it in terms of what technology can I get from outside. Given the scale, you have to start spending money on R&D in India.
Yeah.
I think this is one area where the Indian corporate sector needs to get its act together. It is, to me, a matter of shame that there are more foreign companies located abroad are spending more money on setting up R&D centers in India than the Indian corporate sector is.
Okay.
And this is an area where we can take a lead, we can leapfrog.
Yeah.
And so don't just talk in terms of how do we get technology from other people. Start putting pressure on people to spend serious money on R&D in India. But one thing, let me just say, I think the key now is radical reform of the electricity sector.
Yeah.
If you don't do that, it will be very difficult to absorb this 175 gigawatts of solar. And this is a major, major task. And what the government has done with the recent exercise, Uday as they call it, okay, it's basically yet another bailout. Earlier bailouts were financed by the center. This bailout will be financed by the states. But beyond that, you need a market system for producing and selling and wholesale selling of power. And we haven't done that. And I think if we don't do that, how can you run a grid where millions of people will be where centers will be feeding power into the grid in the same way as you run a grid with big power stations, where I can pick up a phone and say back down. I can't do that when I have 10 million people with rooftop solars feeding it in.
Right. All right, Subhomoy, one final word to you. As far as the government's next steps are concerned, what do you see the government doing in the immediate? Because as this need out of this agreement comes out, that India really needs to show that it means to walk the line.
Well, one is that the challenges have suddenly multiplied. Let me put a simple one. We give subsidy for petroleum. We are now planning to give subsidy for green energy. Obviously, both can't exist in the same basket. So there has to be, these challenges have to be reconciled. These are the sort of challenges that would now face India more and more. And how we address those questions is, the time is getting short, because you need to start performing also. As Professor Desai said, you'll have to bring in technology, which means you'll have to cut down some of the SOPs that have been offered. So essentially, it means quite a bit of convulsion within the economy in terms of what will be offered and what will be withdrawn. We have already seen some example of that in the NGT order on diesel cars. These sort of challenges will now multiply more and more.
All right, and finally to you, Chandra Bhushan, I'll give you the final word, because you'll be the one who'll be keeping a close watch on the government and pushing the government to do more to make India adhere to its pledge. What would be the steps that you would want the government and the larger businesses also at large to make in the near future?
I think the first thing India needs to do is to move the debate out of Delhi to state governments, state capitals. I think right now, whatever we are talking is only in Delhi and few ministries. If we really want to meet our target and do more on that, state governments and different ministries will need to be involved. I think we need to broad base the debate on climate change, involve research institutions, industry, civil society. So I think the need is to broad base and mainstream climate change. Right now it is just in few ministries, and that's not going to be sufficient.
All right, interesting point to make over there. We'll have to wrap it up because we've run out of time, but thank you very much, all of you, for coming in. Mr. Desai, Subhomoy, and Chandra Bhushan. Sorry for getting your name wrong at the start. But as far as the Paris Climate Accord is concerned, indeed, it's historic, a lot to look forward to, but India's pledged certainly a lot and will be held accountable to by the world as well. So we'll have to wait and watch as to how this develops. Thanks so much for watching for now.